after Ehrlichman left, the president had me come back and to review his meeting with Ehrlichman.
Although the Ehrlichman meeting had gone well, Nixon was concerned that he wouldn't go quietly. He feared that Ehrlichman still wanted the president to admit he had ordered illegal acts.
I wasn't aware that Haldeman had gone back for a second meeting with Nixon. He didn't mention it that day. He's never mentioned it since.
They agreed to leave. And so it was late, but I did it.
The next night, the president went on television to announce he'd cleaned up his administration.
Today, in one of the most difficult decisions of my presidency, I accepted the resignations of two of my closest associates in the White House, Bob Haldeman, John Ehrlichman, two of the finest public servants it has been my privilege to know. The counsel to the president, John Dean, has also resigned.
Now Dean was out, he needed immunity more than ever. His lawyer told him it was time to tell the whole story, no matter who was involved.
I said, so what about the president? We can't talk about the P. I says, the P? I says, what are you talking about, the P? He says, oh, it's the national security, it's attorney-client privilege, it's this, that's the other thing. I says, if the two of you in the pod committing the crime together, I says that there's no privilege that protects one co-conspirator from another co-conspirator.
Dean finally agreed to tell the prosecutors about his conversations with the president, including the one in which Nixon had said he could get $1 million to pay off the burglars.
It was clear that what he was saying was that the president knew all about what was going on and had been advised and was reported to and was informed of things.
The prosecutors couldn't agree if Dean's new evidence justified immunity. Seymour Glanzer was convinced it was worth giving him a deal in order to prosecute the men above him.
That was a very persuasive argument, and Seymour is very persuasive. I just felt differently.
Silbert felt that if the counsel to the president broke the law, he must not go unpunished, and he had the final say.
We told him, Silbert told him unequivocally that there was not going to be immunity for Dean.
I said no deal, and I told Glanzer, I said, Glanzer, you haven't got the only show in town.
The other show in town that could grant Dean immunity was the Senate Watergate Committee. Chairman Sam Ervin and his fellow Democrats were delighted to have Dean as their star witness. But the vice chairman was out to shield the White House from his own committee's investigation.
And it was absolutely natural for the ranking Republican, the senior Republican, to go down to the White House and say, look, I'm your friend, and I'm going to try to keep these heathen devils from biting your ankle.
Soon after the committee had been formed, Baker had met the president secretly. He agreed to do all he could to undermine the Democrats' attack.
But I asked him to reassure me that no member of the staff at the White House was involved. His answer was not very categorical about that. And it was from that point forward that I guess it formed in my mind, Baker, you better steer a center course here.
Nixon's brief for his discussion with Senator Baker had been prepared by John Dean, at that time his loyal counsel. Dean noted that, to maintain his purity in the Senate, Baker doesn't want anyone to know about his meeting with the president.
And I knew just enough to know that he was playing both sides. He had a foot in both camps. So whichever way it fell, he was going to be there.
Baker's loyalties were put to the test even before the public hearings began. At a closed session, the Democrats proposed granting immunity to Dean. Senator Baker bristled.
I especially resented that he really showed no trace of remorse about his lack of fidelity to his former boss.
Baker then said, why should we give immunity to the worst criminal in Watergate? He's the one that ought to be indicted. He's the one that should be imprisoned, John Dean.
But Baker convinced only one other Republican, Senator Gurney, to vote with him. It was time for Baker to steer his center course.
Senator Baker then said to Gurney, well, you know, we do want the public to respect this committee, and it won't look good that if we seem like we're not all together. So I'm willing to change my vote.
The committee voted unanimously to request Judge Sirico to enter orders allowing the committee to give immunity to John W. Dean III.
Dean had struck an excellent deal. He would write a statement that described everything he had done in the cover-up, but the Republicans would be prevented from seeing it in advance.
The deal with that was that Dean was to come right out of my office and appear on public session, on television, in the Senate.
John Dean now set out to destroy the President of the United States.
Subcommittee will come to order.
Dean's appearance was carefully staged, horn-rimmed glasses instead of his usual contact lenses, a new short haircut, and suitably escorted.
I thought that Mo was a very important exhibit. I thought she should be exhibit number one. She was his wife. She was a very beautiful woman.
Dean's testimony described all his meetings with the President in chilling detail.
The meeting with the President that afternoon with Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and myself was a tremendous disappointment to me because it was quite clear that the cover-up, as far as the White House was concerned, was going to continue.
Republicans were absolutely helpless to do anything with Dean's testimony.
Keeping the Republicans away from Dean before he testified had paid off. Baker had to digest 245 pages of complex testimony as Dean delivered it.
I said, this is like trying to shovel smoke. You know, there's so many facts, and they go in so many different directions. I don't have the foggiest idea, really, what our objective is. What are we after? I want to try to focus this inquiry.
I'm trying to focus on the President. What did the President know, and when did he know it?
Baker's question was subtlety itself. He sounded as though he was being tough on the President, but he was actually being tough on Dean.
Can you tell us whether or not you can shed any further light on whether the President knew of the break-in of the Watergate complex on June 17th?
You mean, did he have prior knowledge of it?
Yes.
I cannot testify of any first-hand knowledge of that.
But Dean's knowledge of the President's role in the cover-up was first-hand.
He asked me how much it was going to cost. I gave him my best estimate, which I said was $1 million or more. He, in turn, said to me that, well, $1 million is certainly no problem to raise.
The Republicans had run out of ideas.
Before you do, let me reiterate. The focus of my inquiry is on what did the President know.
And there are two questions to which we must address ourselves here. What did the President know, and when did he stop knowing it?
Several high-ranking members of the Democratic Party are attempting to seize control of the government of the United States by legitimate means.
Public ridicule was a new danger to the presidency as television sitcoms and soaps were replaced by the Senate hearings.
Since you were the Attorney General of the United States, why didn't you throw Mr. Liddy out of your office?
Well, I think, Mr. Dash, in hindsight, I not only should have thrown him out of the office, I should have thrown him out of the window.
Well, since you did neither,
and that relates to some of the subject matter that I'm, at this point, not able to talk to the committee about.
The foreign intelligence activities had nothing to do with the opinion of Ellsberg's psychiatrist about his intellectual or emotional or psychological state.
How do you know that, Mr. Chairman?
Because I can understand the English language. It's my mother tongue.
We're Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Mitchell, and Dean. Our job was to see that the White House stayed green. We might have had flaws like bending the laws, but God only knows it was for a good cause. But so it won't come as a terrible blow. There's one little thing that we think you should know. Whatever we say isn't quite what we mean. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Mitchell, and Dean.